Yo people, today we are making a drum and bass beat inside of Ableton Live. This is what it's going to sound like. Let's get into it and make that beat. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our way into the browser window. We're going to click on drums. We're going to find a drum rack and we're going to click and drag that onto a MIDI channel, doesn't matter which one. I'm going to delete that first MIDI channel and delete those two audio channels. So I've just got that one drum rack in there. I'm going to come to samples. Today I'm going to be using the same samples that I used for the dubstep beat video that I did last week. And that's these Mothership Pack samples by Cymatics. The link will be in the video description below. You'll be able to find them, download them, and use them in your own production. So let's open it up, and I can click on these to audition them. I'm going to take the G sharp kick, put it on the first drum pad there. It's going to drop in, and then I'm able to click it to trigger it. Next, I'll take a snare. I'm going to take that A sharp snare, quite like that one, drag and drop it in there. I want to do a couple of things. I want to tune these drum samples straight away so that they're in the same key. So you notice that G sharp is the note that that kick is tuned to, and then A sharp is the note that the snare is tuned to. And they work together no problem, but I just want to show you how to pitch them if you want to. So there is two semitones difference between those two samples. So if we grab an EQ and we chuck it onto the sample, so we drop it on the sample pad, it's going to put the EQ just on the sample. So even though these are both on the same channel, within this drum rack I can put effects on just one or the other sample. So this EQ is just on the snare, and if I double click on the EQ interface here, it makes it really big. And if I double click here to make a MIDI clip and I just put my snare in, so I know that my snare pattern is actually going to be on the second beat and the fourth beat of a 1-bar loop. So let's go ahead and play that. So the snare's triggering. I need to set my BPM to 175 to be the correct speed. And if I mouse over here, you'll see that the fundamental, or the loudest part of that snare, is around 460 hertz. So that falls in the area of A sharp. Now I want to detune it by 2 semitones and drop it down, and that would end up being about 50 hertz. The reason I know that is because I've looked up a frequency chart. The link to that will also be in the video description, and you can have a look at the different frequencies and their values as they relate to the notes. So what we'll do is we'll quickly grab a frequency shifter. We'll drop it on that channel, and I want to do this video as quick as possible. So sorry, I'm going to speed it up. I really want this to get out quickly. So we're going to go negative 50 hertz on the frequency shifter. So we've detuned that snare. Now what I want to do is I want to take some of the low end out of this snare. It doesn't need to be there. It's not serving a purpose. It just sounds kind of weird. So if I'm just soloing it there so you can hear it by itself. So we're going to turn that into a high pass. And if we cut it here, we're taking too much. So I'm going to take it maybe around there just so a little bit of the lower body is preserved. But I don't want any of that really deep stuff coming through. Okay, so if I click back on the clip, come down here and click the other tab, I can see the pattern again. The kick is going to go on the first beat, and the kick will not go on the third beat. It'll go halfway through the third beat. Okay, so if I press spacebar, that's your typical drum and bass beat rolling already. Right click, insert MIDI track, click on the MIDI track, go Control R to rename hi-hats. We're going to come into that sample pack again. We're going to go into drums first, drop a drum rack, come into samples, close down that, open up that, open up that. We're just going to take that one hi-hat, but we're going to put two versions of it in. Okay, so we've got two hi-hats. They're exactly the same. We'll make a new MIDI clip. We'll make sure it's on 16th notes, which it is, and we're going to alternate between those two hi-hats. We'll audition how that sounds without the rest of everything. So robotic rigid, repetitive, okay? So we are going to spice it up. So the first thing we're going to do to spice it up is we come into the transpose for one of the samples, let's say the second one, and we'll go -2, okay? So we're going to drop that 2 semitones down as well. And I'm not using the frequency shifter for this. Reason being is, first of all, I can't actually tell what that is tuned to. The hi-hat sort of doesn't have a tuning, so I'm just going to drop it semitones just so the pitch is slightly different. I could do that with the frequency shifter, and the frequency shifter is handy because it seems to make the high-end frequency content of your samples sound nicer when you do pitch it down. The transpose tends to kind of make it a bit weird. And if I warp that and I put it on repitch mode, makes it a bit weird. So we're just going to go -2 semitones on that, and then let's listen to how that sounds. So now you have an alternation, a sort of skittering effect between those two hits, and you've already got a little bit more variation, and we're just going to keep adding the variation until it sounds really nice. So I'm just going to cut the low out of these hi-hats as well. They sort of have a low rumble. They don't need that. Typically, they're only filling up the very high frequency band. So cutting it around there, it's fine. You're not losing sort of, these hi-hats don't really need a body to them that kind of lies in the lower frequencies. Next, what we'll do is inside of this is simpler, and it's holding our first hat. We can grab the tail. This is the length of the sample, and we can actually make the length shorter. And if we go down to the fade out, we can roll off the fade. So we can just make our samples just a little bit tighter. So I'll do the same to the second one. And it makes them more precise. They're more focused. So next, what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and apply a groove template to that. So I'm just going to quickly disappear so you can see. So here is the groove pool, and you access it by opening up this little wave symbol here that opens the groove pool. I right click and I can go to browse groove libraries, and here I can find different grooves that I can apply to my hi-hats. And what a groove is it's going to humanize it. So at the moment it's MIDI and it's rigidly in time, but a human drummer never drums perfectly in time. They're always a little bit sloppy and out of time, and that actually works really well rhythmically when it's done tastefully. So we're essentially adding that to this this MIDI. You can also add it to audio as well. So we're going to open up the MPC. So this is there's an MPC drum machine, and it had groove and swing inside of it, and this is basically sampling that. So if you click, you can hear the rhythm. So I'm just going to take the first one, and you notice I skipped all of these. It's because they're 8th note patterns. I want a 16th note pattern, and I can't drag that out because it's going to ruin my template, but that is 16th. Just take my word for it. So if I drag and drop it on top of that clip, now we have that groove applied to that MIDI clip, and you can see the parameters down here. So if I play that, and I turn the velocity way up, you really notice it. And if I come to the quantize and turn that way up, you really notice it. And I'm actually going to leave it that exaggerated. So I'm finished with this pool here, and I'm going to reappear, and we're going to continue with the tutorial. So let's play that all together. So now those hi-hats have gone to rigid sounding instruments to nice and groovy and moving with the rest of the groove, okay? So we can take it a bit further. So we could sidechain the hi-hats so that they move when the kick and the snare play, the hi-hats move out of the way. So the way that we're going to do that is by using Ableton's compressor. So we select the channel, the hi-hat channel, we grab the compressor and we drop it down here. So with the compressor, don't be overwhelmed. Sidechain compression is essential to understand, and it's not that difficult. Compression as a whole topic is difficult, but sidechaining much simpler. So basically what I'm saying is when the kick and the snare play, I want the volume of the hi-hats to be pushed down. I want them to move out of the way, get out of the way of the mix. So I can use this compressor, and I can click on that triangle, and I can activate the sidechain, and I can say I want the audio to be the drum rack. So the drum rack contains our kick and snare. Let's click on that, rename kick snare, so it makes more sense to us. We'll come back to the hi-hat channel. We click here. So I want the audio from the kick and snare channel, and I want it to be fed into this compressor, and I want it to be triggering this compressor. So when the kick plays, this compressor is going to know, and I can set the ratio, let's say, to 6, the attack to instant, because when that kick plays, I want the volume reduction to act instantly. I want it to move straight out of the way. And then my release, I'm going to set it to around 85 milliseconds. So that is actually calculated in time with the music. And I'm going to put a link to the music calculator in the description below as well. So now if I play this and I start to pull the threshold down, we're going to start getting gain reduction. And when we get that, you're going to notice that the hi-hats start kind of pumping. And if we just listen to the hi-hats by themselves, and I start moving this, and let's come back over here. Sorry, they need to be playing, but I can mute them. So they're still playing in the background, but I'm not hearing them through the master. So you can see if I turn that compressor off, they're loud and playing. So they're getting pushed down in volume. You can see whenever that gain reduction lights up, that means that a kick or a snare is being triggered. So if I play it all together, and I turn the compressor off, they're talking a little bit more all over top of everything. And if I turn that compressor on, they sort of just recede a little bit into the background and move around the kick and the snare. It's a really cool technique. So I'm going to double click on these to drop them away. The final thing that we'll do is we're going to get an auto pan, drop the auto pan on there. So an auto pan will automatically pan the sound between the left and the right speaker. And we can say the amount, so how far we want it to go to the left or the right. So we'll set that at around 40%, just something average. The rate operates either on a hertz value, so we can set that, but it wouldn't be synced perfectly in time. We can come down here to the musical note, and then we can actually set it in time. And I'm going to set it to 1/4, so that it's in time with the music, and then we'll listen to that. So now we've got some interesting effect going on with the stereo. And we're starting to get a really nice sounding loop. So that is how you get some nice hi-hats and a nice kick and snare combination. And you can go nuts and add more things. So if we add another MIDI track, and we can go cymbal, and we can come into the drums, and we can go to the 909 kit, and we can click and drag that in there. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and right click and put another MIDI track in, and I'm going to grab another 909. I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to call that ride as soon as it loads. Ride. Okay, so we're going to use the cymbal in here. So we double click, we make a clip. We're going to set that clip length to 4 bars. So we want the crash to play every 4 bars. We draw the crash in, all good. We let that stay there for a minute. We double click to make a ride. And for the ride, we'll put it on 16ths, and we'll go ride, 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 ride. Let's listen to that, see whether it works. It's going to be quite loud, but let's have a go. Okay, it's walking all over top of everything. Let's come. What we'll do is I'm just going to put my cursor over to the groove pool. No, actually, I can do it another way. I can show you how to do it another way. So I click on the clip, I come down here to groove, and I apply that groove that we have on the hi-hats. So if I solo that ride and listen to it, that's better already. It's not so random sounding and loud. I can come to the hi-hat channel. I'll get the EQ, the compressor, and the auto pan. I'll get everything. I'm going to put it on the ride. But with the auto pan, what I'll do is I'm going to change it. So we'll drop that down. We could change, not the phase. We set that back to the default value. Right click, return to default. But we can set the offset for that. So when the hi-hats are in that speaker, the ride will be in that speaker. And if I bring that down in volume just a little bit. Okay, let's play it all together. That cymbal's really dry and kind of weird sounding. But we can make that more exciting by putting reverb on it. It'll push it sort of into the mix, make it sit a little bit better. The hi-hats in the ride, we could put a bit of treatment on them. So what we'll do, just to round out this tutorial, is we'll group them together and we'll go high, let's just say high, for the high frequency stuff, because that's what it is. We come in here and we'll grab a reverb, we'll chuck it on that channel, we'll bring it down to like 30%, we'll put it on high, we'll put the pre-delay, let's just put it on 0, and we'll bring the decay time down, and we'll listen to the hats, and we'll bring that value down to maybe 20. Bring it back to 30. Just adding a little bit of reverb onto that to create a bit more interest. The kick and snare, we could try putting a drum bus on it, and we could use this punchy driven preset, drop it on there. We'll solo that and have a listen. Okay. It's making that kick much tougher already, but maybe it's just a bit too much. Nah, it's good. Let's just do it. And you can mix all of this to taste. If you want the ride to be louder or quieter, or you want it to be a different pattern, go ahead and change it. Your hi-hat's cool. You could change up the pattern for that as well. You could get more interesting. That cymbal, like I said, you make it more interesting, chucking a reverb on it. But that is how I would get started making a drum and bass beat at 175 BPM. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to see you in the next one.